How about a nice meal while you chew it over?
What's on the menu?
Rat. Sauté or fricassee?
Oh, the agony of choice. Sautéed involved?
Well, you take the freshly shaved rat and you marinate it in a puddle for a while.
For how long?
Till it's drowned. Then you stretch it out under a hot light bulb. Then you get within dashing distance of a latrine and you scoff it right down.
So that's sautéing and fricasseing?
Exactly the same, just a slightly bigger rat.
Welcome to the Objective Secure podcast. My name's Mike.
Hey, I'm Emma.
This is episode 51, The Agony of Choice. We're going to be talking about selecting new armies and how you, well, basically where you start when you pick a new army for any tabletop wargaming that you might be indulging in over the coming months and years.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about...
Maybe you're just starting out, either in a brand new game, I guess, or whether you are choosing a new army after playing for multiple decades.
Which is kind of what's going on for me at the moment. So, nice little apt topic there to talk about. Before we get into the topic, though, we should cover some what's been going on news and some current affairs within the community and so on. We're going to start with having a quick chat about two companies that have supported us fairly consistently since particularly in regards since we got stuck in with show. So we'll start with Down Under Pairings. Downunderpairings.com is the website if you want to go and check them out. They've just had a massive facelift for the website in terms of look and feel and accessibility. So Down Under Pairings is basically an event management suite of software that lets you record people's scores, organise the results. Basically, you can run an entire tournament for just about any game system paperlessly.
From your electronic device.
Yeah. The fact that it's not an app and is just a website actually means that you get a lot less compatibility issues because as long as you've got internet access on your device, you can access it.
Yeah.
And since all the apps that are used in the world at the moment that I'm aware of require internet access anyway, if you can use an existing suite of software at the moment, you can definitely use Down Under Pairings.
Yeah.
Down Under Pairings is also part of Down Under Network, if you've watched them on the streams at all. I've actually been fortunate enough to be on those streams a couple of times now as a commentator. But definitely worth going and checking out Down Under Pairings for any tournaments you might be running or hosting. It's a great suite. It works for doubles, teams. 40K is the predominant one it started off, but we've helped the developer down the road of adding a whole bunch of new game systems, and it's constantly being updated and added.
Yeah, helped. That's a good choice of words.
And
we're very grateful that he's added in those game systems.
We are very,
so
very
we've
grateful.
been able to use them across, I guess, all of the different systems that we run, particularly for Southern Hemisphere Open.
Yeah, Show 2018 was the first massive test of it where we ran a whole bunch of different games over multiple days, and we did the same again in 2019. Also, all of the Australian rankings are hosted on Down Under Pairings as well, if you're interested in those.
Yep.
So go and check it out, downunderpairings.com. Thank you very much again to Josh and the team at Down Under Pairings.
And if you are still using paper to run tournaments, seriously have a look at Down Under Pairings.
Yeah, this is free.
And it just makes the whole tournament organiser experience on the day so much easier. Yep,
you score right down to scoring sports if you want to do that, painting if you want to do that. All your generalships are customizable. ITC is supported, including round-by-round ITC scoring. That's part of the scorecard for the players. It's about as user-friendly as possible, and if you use the contact function or get on their Facebook page, you can get direct access to the developer who will answer any questions and help you through.
Maybe you shouldn't be promoting that bit, but
Well, it's too late now. It's recorded and I'm not editing it.
yeah. And I just want to say that when these aren't,
This isn't
a
paid.
paid advertorial type thing. Just that this is the system that we use, and it has made life so much easier for us.
Well, since the last event we ran prior to starting with Down Under Pairings was WATC 2018, which was in April 2018. That was the last one we did by hand.
We did.
Well, you did. That used War Score with pen and paper.
Yeah.
And we tried another app-based suite prior to that as well with mixed results.
Oh, it was still better than pen and paper.
It was better than pen and paper, but this as a one, like we don't bring pens and paper to tournaments anymore.
No.
We don't need to, which is fantastic. Well, it's mostly fantastic.
So we need a pen and paper for something else and then go, oh,
Yeah,
all of those
mainly to
out.
write the awards out, but to be fair, you can generate those on here as well and have your screen in your mobile phone.
Yeah.
Anyway, so check it out, downunderpairings.com. We're going to jump to some news this week from Games Workshop because there's been a whole bunch of it. They release like 1 or 2 things a day, which is just crazy to keep up with. I want to start with Warhammer Underworlds, though, because we've seen a whole bunch of stuff about Beastgrave.
Yeah, I'm going to admit it's not eliciting as much excitement as the previous versions have.
It's certainly been a mixed bag. I think part of that's to do with the cycling out of the original deck of cards and like discontinuing the warbands and stuff, which is a bit disappointing. I also feel like getting rid of Shadespire is their way of saying stop calling it Shadespire.
They called it Shadespire to start with.
Well, no, they called it Warhammer Underworld Shadespire, but it was...
No.
Well, that's true. It was... No one knew this was going to be a seasonal game, I suppose, at the time. So we've seen Ripper's Snarlfangs previewed, which are a bunch of... I would call them goblins, but I think they're called grots, technically, under the Warhammer banner.
Yep.
Riding giant wolves, which look kind of cool. They're nice wolf models. They're probably some of the nicest animal models that Games Workshop's done. I think it's just the 3 models on wolves, and what'll be interesting is how they fit on the hexes, because those look like quite big bases.
They're quite big hexes, though, really.
Yeah, I know. I mean, they get 40mm bases on there from the Stormcast anyway, so they should be fine. But it's good to see some cavalry entering. Along with that, with Beastgrave, we've also seen them preview the new core set, which obviously includes... all the different cards and tokens and dice and so on and so forth. They've also
Did
got
I see terrain?
Well, there's also a whole bunch of extra bits they're going to release as well. So there's the new card slips, the new dice. There's the Beastgrave carry case.
I'm not a fan of that foam.
No, look, I love the case itself, but I think they are getting better because the new case obviously incorporates space for the cards and dice and tokens and even a hex space for the tiles. But it still uses that zigzag foam. Yeah. Which is just terrible. And I know it's meant to be flexible so you can put whatever warband you want in it.
The problem is it's flexible so everything falls out.
Yeah. To be honest, if they just gridded that into 6 squares or 8 squares...
Or just pluck foamed it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, if you pluck foamed it, you could then just, modify it to whatever you've got.
What'd be cool is to see a third party produce a foam tray for that.
Yeah, that's true.
That actually fits the case.
As far as third-party stuff goes, I know Thomas from Amazing Forge has got a really, I think it's cute, but that's probably not the best word to describe
the box that he's prototyping. Yeah, it's a carries the boards and everything, rule books. Yeah. It's literally the game in a box. But
I mean you can add different layers. So if you don't want to have the layer that has the rule books in it, then you can leave that at home. But it is it's cute with all the little compartments and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And look,
cute.
there's also the deck box. I love the artwork for Beastgrave. I really do love that sort of orangey, burny, horn spiky thing going on. I really like it. There's also the new playmat, which is the neoprene style dashboard that they do. It's really interesting they're selling these, but the unique ones that we get for running Grand Clashes are cardboard. Yeah. So I wonder whether that'll change going forward. Who knows? There's also the new counter sets that you can buy separately as well, and then the it's called the Primal Lair set, which is basically plastic scenery to represent the blocked and dangerous hexes. So instead of using the little tokens, you can buy plastic models and paint them.
So how many hex squares do you reckon that top one would fill?
I reckon.
3?
Well, that's a double, I would say. It's a giant dinosaur-style skull and neck and spine.
Right, yep, cool.
I reckon it's a double hex from the look of it. It could be a triple. We can't really see the angle, but I think from memory the boards don't have a triple anywhere
That's
on
what I
them.
was trying to remember.
I think it'll be a double. They look really nice. Not necessary for the game, but there's plenty of hobbyists out there who like adding that extra level of dimensionality to their game. And what's really good as well is it seems like they've contained the hexes so that they don't overhang. So they look cool without getting in the way of the game. We also get to see the new warbands that are coming in the starter box, which are Grashnak's Despoilers and Skaith's Wild Hunt. So the Despoilers are beastmen, essentially. So you've got a Bray Shaman-style character who I think they previewed his name, but it escapes me. And then a champion-style character. Both they used to be called Gore, which were the beast men. And then the 4 Ungore. So there's 2 hunters with bows and then 2 warriors with spears. Pretty cool models. It's been a long time since beastmen have actually had bows, though. I don't recall them being in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Maybe it's being updated. But the warband that I really like is the Wild Hunt. So we saw these painted as a preview. It was a while ago now.
Stop scrolling. I'm trying to look, and
So
it really annoys me. He sits here and scrolls up and down. Oh.
So there's they're kind of one's a centaur essentially. There's a lion or a cat of some kind, and then I think the other 3 are satyr, because they certainly appear to have sort of that goat-style leg going on, half elf, half animal of some kind. I don't know what's going on. There's one that looks like it's leaping with a sword.
I'm going to be honest, from the angle I'm on, it does look a bit like a witch jumping on a broomstick.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. I love the centaur, though.
Yeah,
it's an amazing model.
Yeah.
Even the elf thing with a bow and the horn, for that matter.
I really like all of them.
It's just that weird, the jumpy one with the sword, and it might just be the angle of the photograph.
Yeah.
But again, it's got that sort of larger cavalry-style base for the centaur. So hopefully that'll fit in the hexes nicely. But yeah, lots to come for Underworlds, and it'll be interesting to see what the Grand Clash for 2020 brings as well. Next up, we've had This Is a Battle Bulletin. This was, now I don't know what happened here, but Part 16 was previewed on the Warhammer community page and then pulled down for a period of time and then put back up again. So whether or not...
Did anyone screenshot it when it was
I'm fairly sure they did. I think there's been some photos corrected or some photos added, because now we've got the new Rhino. So it's not a whole new kit from the looks of it. There's definitely, at the very least, it's a conversion kit.
Yeah.
Because the doors are brand new, the top door is brand new. There's a whole bunch of little accessory parts that they've added around this, sort of make little grail reliquaries and that sort of thing along the top. The Hunter-Killer missile's definitely brand new, with a cool little eagle wing and array. The front plate on the Rhino is also brand new. Now, whether that is a single-piece conversion that just glues on top of the
pops on
standard piece or not, I don't, or whether it's a whole new front plate, I don't know. It looks like it could just sort of click on top, and then it's got the little fleur-de-lis toe points that hang off the front of it. And what's most interesting for me, though, is these little filigrees that are on the sides of the tank, these little sort of embellishments. If they're standalone pieces and aren't cast as part of the main... Like, if it's not a brand new mold for the side of that Rhino, that means you have to try and cut those little pieces off of a sprue and then glue them down. And for me, I'd want to make sure they're the right height and they matched on both sides.
Yeah.
And that'd really, really irk me to the point where I probably wouldn't put them on if I couldn't get them to match. Or maybe put them in, like, one of the recessed components where I knew that
where
I could...
you know they're going to put...
Where they're going to line up.
Exactly,
Yeah. It's a really nice-looking kit. They've got little the little swords and stuff you can attach. You've also got like parchments and purity seals. There's also a gunner, a plastic This Is a Battle gunner to mount in the top to hold the Stormbolter. So lots coming. They've already previewed the army set. We saw that at Nova. So it can't be far now. The book has to be around the corner.
How long have we been saying this for?
Well, they told us in November last year. I think it was November last year, that Sisters of Battle will be released in 2019. We're in September now.
Yeah, we're running out of 2019.
Like, you'd assume this is going to be a Christmas release at this point. Just, like, drop it at the start of December for Christmas.
Yeah.
either way, it's looking really exciting. I don't, unless they start releasing new stuff, I think they've covered everything now. There can't be too much more to add to this. And the fact that this isn't like a 3D scan like some of the earlier bulletins were, this is a painted, finished model, means that, to me at least, this means that if we haven't produced the codex yet, I'm assuming the codex is probably done by now, this is a model that we'll probably see in the codex as part of the double page and quad page glossies. Yeah. So I reckon we can't be far off from it. Late November, early December would be my guess. But the last part of the release that's got me the most excited is the next expansion part for Psychic Awakening. They're giving us basically one every Monday in the lead up to this. So the latest release was Monday the 16th, and we got the next part of the Eldari Prophecy. I saw a post somewhere. The first line reads, "Yet that was not the nadir of our empire, not truly." The amount of people that don't read nadir and understand that means downfall, or the bottom of our, like, it means that wasn't what caused the end of our empire, is interesting. I've seen a lot of people going, what does that word mean?
I wouldn't know.
I find it ironic that they're on a computer going to Facebook asking what that word means instead of using Google.
Yeah, well, I do get your point. Often people on Facebook know.
Well, that's true.
They know the law. They know the kind of the story behind it, and some of these words are made up.
Well, some of them are. Yes, that's true. Actually, I wonder whether that one is. I don't know. Anyway, we saw the Howling Banshee Exarch for the last release, which was I love the model, but it's been a bit polarizing for parts of the community. Mm-hmm. We now have the new preview for the plastic
kayaking goat skull.
Plastic incubi. This is the Clavex that they previewed for us. So this is the equivalent of the Howling Banshee Exarch. She had a big glaive weapon, had an option for 2 swords. Mm-hmm. This particular model has a big glaive weapon, which becomes 2 swords in the game, and you can even see on the model where the 2 hilts meet. Yep. That's probably the part of the model I like the least, because it feels a bit clumsy in the way that connections, like it literally looks like he's holding 2 swords end to end. And I know that that's what it's meant to be, but I don't know. I would have liked something other than just the flat butt of a sword there, like a little join point. I don't know how to describe it. But I've also seen a lot of people say his head's really big, and I think part of that's to do with the horns.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think
when you actually look at, like, if you
all
put
of these models' heads are out of proportion.
They are, yeah. When you actually put his head in the right space for that helmet, though, which is basically the white faceplate, yes, the tip of the helmet comes up higher, and yes, he's obviously got the big horns that make his head look really long and large. I actually think the head's in proportion. I love the fact we haven't seen this weapon before. These are demi-claves. They introduced these back in 5th edition, and we've never had a model for them, this particular weapon.
I don't like the weapon, personally.
No? They're meant to be that sort of executionary style, gigantic sword. I like the fact we've got these little tendrils around its feet, just the little gestures of something creepy going on at his base. It'll be interesting to see the unit, because obviously this is the squad leader. We haven't seen the unit, where we've seen one Howling Banshee and then we've seen the Exarch, and they kind of match quite well. So I'm assuming this is very close to the current models anyway, which are fine casts, or in my case, they're metal.
Yeah.
So assuming the rest of them keep that aesthetic, which from all accounts and looking at this, that they will.
Should do, yeah.
It'll be, an easy plug into a Drakari army. I had someone point this out as well. He's got streamers on both of his arms, blowing in different directions.
Crosswinds.
Yeah. There's little broken spirit stones all over him as well from all the other Eldari he's killed, which is a nice little touch for the model as well. What size base do you reckon he's on? Is that a standard 25mm base, do you think?
40.
Bearing in mind he's Eldari sized, I don't think it's any bigger than 32.
I actually have no idea at all, to be honest. Like, there's nothing in there to give you scale.
No.
I literally just plucked a number. So,
I actually reckon, I was hoping they'd put the Exarchs and the sort of the Sergeants on 32s. I don't think it is. I think that's a 25mm base.
His feet are right at the very edge.
I mean, I'm looking at my Dark Reapers and whatnot that are sat here on the table, and they're all...
How old are they?
2007.
So
6?
12 years, how much size creep has there been? How much bigger is he likely to be?
Well, the incubi, the metal incubi are 2010, I think they were. So they're in the same era as the Dark Reapers that are sat here with me, and they're all on 25s as well. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping he's on a 32, but I reckon that'll be a 25. The other question for this model and the Howling Banshees is, what does that mean for when you buy them? So what do I mean by that is, when you bought a box of Howling Banshees in Finecast or Metal, they came in 6. You got 5 regular guys and an Exarch.
Mm-hmm.
With the Incubi, you just got 5 guys because there was never really a Clavex model for the squad.
Yeah.
Games Workshop have a habit of letting you build a regular dude or a sergeant for things like Space Marines and...
And does it say regular dude on the box?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
They actually published a Space Marine called The Dude a long time ago in a White Dwarf as part of Movie Marines. But so do they go down the road of producing these as a box of 6, where you get 5 and an Exarch, or Clavex, as the case may be, and then you have to buy 2 boxes to get the squad of 10 and are left with a second Exarch or Clavex that you're not going to use? Or do they charge you, instead of doing them for $60 for the squad of 6, do they then go, cool, we're going to give you a $100 box, we're talking Australian dollars, by the way, and then give you the squad of 9 regular dudes plus the Exarch or the Clavex, so you've got a full squad there, so that way if you don't want to run the Exarch, you're left with 9 models and then you need an extra box? Or do they assume that the Exarch's always going to be taken because there's no cost to it points-wise, so therefore here's the squad of 10? Like, I'd be really interested
to sell him as a character,
as a separate one.
Standalone, yeah.
At that point, though, assuming they do that, like, how much do you charge for the Exarch? You're going, okay, well, most of the plastic clan packs here in Australia, the cheapest ones, the Autarch, I think, is 28 Australian dollars, which if you're then charging $55, which is what the Dire Avenger box, so the Dire Avengers are 5 in a box for $55, but you can make the Exarch or not.
Yeah.
So if it's $55 plus $55 plus $28, that's a $140 unit. Like, that's getting questionable in my mind. At $100 for the full squad, I'd be unhappy, but I'd be okay. Like, I'd still probably buy it.
You would for 140 as well.
I'd never see the difference is I wouldn't buy it from their store. I'd be going looking for a discount online somewhere. Because 140 is a lot, particularly when the squad's only worth 130 points. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Either way, Plastic Incubi coming. Love it. We also saw someone pulled this out from Warhammer Art this morning, that there's a piece of artwork that's just been uploaded of Howling Banshees versus Incubi, all in the new style of armor. And obviously the link to that, of course, is this is coming from the new Psychic Awakening book with these 2 factions in it. Like, why would you ever put these 2 specific units in the same piece of art and release it now, as opposed to, you know, releasing it whenever you did it? Like, it just feels timed, if you will.
Yeah.
So what was more interesting, though, is it also includes the Phoenix Lord Jane Czar for part of the art, and then there's it's not an argument, I suppose, there's a conversation that it's she's facing off against Drahazar, or Drazhar, or however you say his name. I've never quite gotten it right. So if you head to warhammerart.com and then click New Images, you can scroll down and there's one there. It is actually labelled Drazhar versus Jane Czar. So you've got the Howling Banshees, which look very reminiscent of the new model. Then you've got the Incubi they're fighting, which again look very reminiscent of the new model that we've just seen. There's a Clavex off to the bottom left of the screen, clearly with 2 swords in his hand, fighting with the Demi-Clave as 2 weapons. And then smack in the middle, you've got the Jane Czar versus Drazhar image. It looks like he's got a plume of red hair as well, which is a new addition to his style.
I was trying to work out, is it hair or is it a plume on the top of his...
Yeah, I don't know. This model was released back in 3rd edition, back in, I want to say, 98, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
And they've never updated him. He's had the same model since then. I've still got one in blister pack, actually, out in the dungeon. And he was built back in the day like a praying mantis. So he ran his 2 blades. He held them upside down and sort of... I don't know how else to describe it other than he looked like a praying mantis with the way his arms were posed. And this artwork has brought him in line with all the current Incubi style.
Mm-hmm.
There's gold sort of shoulder pads. He's got the demiclaves, one in each hand, but it's that big red plume of hair which mirrors the Howling Banshees and Jane Zar beside him with her big red plume of hair and the Triskel and the Executioner in her hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 99.9% certain Jane Zar is the next preview, which by the time you're hearing this may have already been previewed because we're recording a little bit in advance at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
So we might even have seen Jane Zar by the time you hear this. But nothing I've heard through the rumour mill has mentioned that we're going to get a new Drazhar miniature. And given this artwork and the official nature of this artwork, it makes me think more and more that, hey, maybe we are going to get an update. And even if it's not a new model instantly, I reckon that the Psychic Awakening, which is obviously updating the Banshees, and the Incubi may see an update for him, which in turn will lead to a new model.
In the near future, or in the future.
Yeah, not far away. I've also seen a few people go, oh my god, there's new vehicles for the Drakari in there.
Just looking at that.
That one that's a silhouette just off Jane Zar's hairline is actually a Forge World Reaper.
Yeah.
I've actually got that kit out in the dungeon. The Raider above it, there's a few little artistic license components of it. There's little sort of extra barbs and a different style of sail and whatnot, but I mean, this is artistic license ultimately. I don't think you can take too much out of... We've already got the Raider, is kind of my point. We don't have a Drazhar model that's current, so I think he's probably the most likely thing to pull out of this. If you do want to buy it, they actually do sell them on the website as well. Block mounted and framed and a whole bunch of different ways of supplying it to you. Only 250 of each, apparently. The other one that was released just while we're on Warhammer Art is they added an Eldar Warlock piece of artwork, which was new. So you can definitely tell there's an Eldar release coming because they put artwork up for Ascium and for Howling Banshees for some of Jess Goodwin's concept art. But there's an Eldar Warlock from this, it looks like Siam Han Craft World, based on his colour scheme.
I do like that.
And although the Siam Han are normally red with black or red with white, and he's got a blue helm, so it's a bit hard to say. But there's a few people saying, oh, this is we're finally going to get plastic Warlocks on foot. I think that might be a little bit of wish listing in the short term, because there isn't a plastic Warlock on foot at the moment. But, you know, a box of 5, because you can buy them as a squad, that'd be nice to see at some point as well, because we are slowly seeing fine cast and metal go the way of the dinosaur. So if you want to check out any of that, head to warhammerart.com. You can buy them as art prints, or you can just check out the pretty pictures. Last little piece of news that I wanted to cover that's outside of what we do, because I know we've had a bit of it now, but one more. It's from A-Case. So Olo has been amazing for us for providing prizes and support for a couple of years now. And if you haven't checked them out, you can head to A-Case on Facebook, and there's links there to the website and everything. He's about, it was about a week ago, he was 20% shy, or just shy of 20% of his completion from the latest Kickstarter, which are the powder-coated shelving, which goes in the giant bags and stuff. There's photos here that have got, like, Terrorgeists and Crypt Fiends, like, racked up in huge rows in these giant cases that, like, it carries the whole army. There was even one I saw that was a Space Wolf, Space Marine army, and there's a drop pod in the bottom. Actually, it looks like there's 2 drop pods. There's a Land Raider, a couple of Rhinos, a whole bunch of Wolfen characters, a Storm Fang gunship, Dreadnoughts. Like, it fits.
Yeah.
It's now a whole army case.
Yeah.
So, and putting magnets inside these tanks would be a piece of cake as well. So, not so much for some of the, like, putting flyers, like the Eldar flyers in might be a bit tricky, but yeah, it's pretty amazing what he's achieved with this Kickstarter. So if you haven't checked them out, go head to A-Case on Facebook, or facebook.com/armycase is the actual direct link. Anyway, that's all the kind of news and whatnot that's been going on. We have our Mixed Gaming Day coming up at the end of October.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we have doubles 40k. By the time you hear this, you should have already seen that we're doing a doubles bolt action event with one of the local TOs here,
It's
Dan.
not called bolt action though, is it? What's it called?
I think he's called it the Aces event.
Yeah, that's. I've got my phone open to so that I can mention that Marcus is running another painting workshop at Beyond Games and Hobbies on the 28th of September. So now I've said that, I can have a quick look in the bolt action group and find the name of the.
We've also got a Steamroller War Machine event happening on that day as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have at least 3 different game systems happening that day. We were hoping to sneak a 4th in, but at the moment it'll be 3, which will make our nice full day for us.
Dueling Aces is the name
I knew
of
it was Aces something.
I knew it was Aces as well. I couldn't remember what it was. So I believe it's part 2 of their Dueling Aces.
Well, it's a doubles event.
I think that they're trying to tie it in with. There's a there's an event where they're trying to get people to game for
The 24 hours. Yeah.
solid.
I was chatting to Jacob about that, and if we can get some more info on that, we'll share that on the next episode or one of our lives to talk about exactly how we're going to try and be part of that.
Yeah.
And then following that, the Masters 40k Players Pack has been written. There's a couple of typos in there that I've given. I gave it a copy to our patrons when it was ready for first review.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had some feedback that just needs some tweaking and some copy-paste errors. It's also the first Players Pack that represents the completely revised format for us to make it a bit easier for me to edit going forward. It took a long time to pull apart the old one because there were text boxes here, there, and everywhere.
I haven't actually had a look at it.
It's basically the same information. Like, there's nothing revolutionary in there. I took out some of the double ups of information that had been creeping in over the years as we updated and added for different formats.
I know, but if they're in there twice, maybe people might notice them once. They're important enough to add twice. Some of them want to give people the opportunity to see them.
It also includes the full mission pack in one document. So it is a long document. There's 19 pages of it. But 6 of those are the missions. 1 of those is the mission clarifications and deployments and all the other bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
1 of those is a map for the venue. And 1 of those is the painting scorecard. So there's 9 pages there.
So what you're saying is don't be
intimidated by the fact it's 19 pages.
19 pages.
Um,
And we would rather give you more information.
yeah.
Like, we would much rather you have as much information as physically possible than leaving gaps in your knowledge.
Well, I looked at the WATC pack, and that was 9 pages, but then there was a 7-page supplementary document for all the missions and all the paraphernalia. So when you actually put the 2 together, it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
It just means you have to get 2 documents rather than 1.
Mm.
So this made a bit more sense. The tickets for Masters will go on sale shortly. Once basically the players' pack's finalised. I know that a couple of the patrons are actually going to play the revised missions this weekend.
Perfect.
So hopefully, by the time you're hearing this, they may already be on sale.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
So normally we record our podcast
A few days out.
Yeah, on the Monday, and then Mike edits on the Tuesday, and it goes up on the Wednesday. But
we're recording a week in advance at this point.
We're recording a week in advance because I have
other commitments.
Events that I'm photographing next week.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we're just going to have to caveat that with it may already be out.
Who knows what's happening in the next 7 days before this goes out.
So, and then, yeah, we jump straight into 2020 with a whole host of events. Once the Masters pack is fully locked down and we've got the new chapter approved, which should be November, I think was the last one, then I'll be able to release the First Blood Players pack once I know what those missions look like. And then, we go sort of straight into the full gamut of events.
Yeah, now with that, I know that this is quite a way away because it is sort of a year from now, but we are still looking at the Boots on the Ground event to head over to Nova next year. The reason that we sort of talked about it and then we stopped talking about it is not because we're not going, but because we actually have to wait for them to announce when it's going to be and where. Because for the last couple of years it's been Washington, but this year, what did we see that made us think that they've actually changed the venue? It was from Warhammer Community. Yeah, no, it was for the Underworlds.
That was on the Warhammer Community page. They're talking about it going to Virginia. Yeah, so we had sort of great plans that we were going to head over to Washington and what that was going to look like, and now we're just waiting for everything to for us to have the information. So Nova 2020 is September 2nd to 16. Yep.
Sorry. 2nd to 6th, not 2nd to 16. That's a really long event.
Now, that's all they've kind of...
It's got something on the venue there.
Well, it depends on whether they've updated the website to include the updated venue details. See, it just says this page has expired.
Okay.
And that's kind of left us questioning where it's actually going to be.
So my point is, start saving, and as soon as we have more information on where that's going to be, we will make sure that we get that information out to you.
Yeah. I know, like I say, we know that they're hosting the first Mega Grand Clash. There was a name for it, and I've forgotten it again.
Yeah.
But as soon as we know where it is, then we'll be able to confirm that. It is listed on their Facebook page as Arlington, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
But traditionally, it's not been there.
No, it hasn't. You're right.
Or am I thinking of a completely different event? Because the whole point of it being called the Nova was the
Virginia.
Northern Virginia. But I know that
it does say
Washington DC.
Yeah.
I know it was in Washington this year.
Mm.
So it'd be interesting if I'm assuming it's staying in Washington, and maybe it's just moved there over the years.
Well,
but it specifically said it on the community page that it was in
Virginia. It did
Virginia.
definitely say it was in Virginia, because I remember trying to think. I'm sure I'm terrible with geography, but I remember thinking I'm sure Virginia isn't in Washington.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fairly sure they're different states. But my knowledge, as I say, my geography is terrible.
Yeah. So as soon as we know more, we'll be able to let you know.
But as I said, start saving.
Yep, and we'll hopefully have some details on pricing and the general format for that event shortly. Now that we've got some dates to work with, at least we can start planning.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we will take a quick break, and we're going to come and talk about, the agony of choice and building and picking a new army. Okay, so building an army, and where do we start?
And this has come up a couple of times, or basically in Facebook groups that I've noticed. This is why I sort of suggested it, because people are sort of saying, "Oh, I'm looking at starting an army. Which one should I start with? What's going to be the best army to build?" And Mike, your advice is always the same, which is pick the army with the models that you like the most.
Yeah.
And then we sort of had a brief chat about it before we actually started recording. And then we were having a conversation about the new army that you're starting and which paint scheme, and your reluctance to choose the paint scheme that you actually like because you're worried about what the backlash may potentially be. So we just kind of thought, let's dive into those and have a bit of a chat about them.
Yeah. I think regardless of game system, if you've decided, hey, I want to play this game,
mm-hmm.
and as usual, we use Warhammer 40,000 as the reference point because it's the one that we run the most events for.
Yeah, and that way you can sound more knowledgeable and we don't make quite as many
exactly.
mistakes.
Often the reason you elect to get involved in the game is, first of all, you think it looks fun,
mm-hmm.
but also I think part of it will generally be you've seen something that looks cool. And then you'll go and do a bit more reading and go, oh, that looks cool. And you might see 2 or 3 other things that look cool as well. And I think that you have to have a vested interest in whatever force you choose for whatever game you play in terms of the aesthetics to basically motivate you to learn and paint and hobby to actually get it on the table. There are plenty of players out there who build armies that don't care about the painting, that don't necessarily care about any of the surrounding information, and do it because they want to win games, and that's fine. But the only way you get that knowledge generally is to actually get into the hobby first before you make the active choice to go, oh, I don't like painting. So I'm, I think it always starts with, that's a cool model, therefore I shall buy it and I shall try and learn how to do this. And sometimes it's returning hobbyists who've been out of the game for 10 years who go, oh, you know what? They've just released a new X. They were always my favourite faction. Oh, but should I buy them? Are they any good now?
And that's the thing. Are they any good?
part of that stems from what you want to get out of the game, like your goal for getting back in and for joining. Because if you're joining to compete and win tournaments, then that question has more validity than, hey, these models look awesome, I want to play games with my buddies.
But does it? Like, so is there any difference between what army you actually choose? People win tournaments or win events regardless of the army that they're playing?
Yeah.
So we don't see, it's not always the same army winning every single event, is it?
No. The player ability does
Grey
play
Knights haven't podiumed in a while.
Well,
but otherwise.
But in Brisbane, we had Eric Lathuris win 6 out of 6 wins and win a 70-player ITC tournament with them.
Oh, there you go.
Pure Grey Knights.
There you go. I sit corrected.
So I definitely think any army can compete. But I think the game at the moment, the way it updates and the way, particularly 40k, I always think you're better off building a collection rather than building an army. And I know that plays into buying, and that's not necessarily an option for everyone. But
no, we've talked about it. That's a separate hobby.
Yeah. But when you have a collection of models, it doesn't matter when something stops being competitive.
Yeah, because you can just cycle something else in there.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the Eldar that I've got sat on the table here in front of us...
I'd rather not.
There are 3 Night Spinner Grav tanks, 3 Crimson Hunters. There's the first of 3 Vols weapon batteries sat there. There's Dark Reapers, Rangers, Dire Avengers, half a dozen different HQs in the form of Autarchs, Warlocks, and Farseers with an avatar. There's also the first 3 Shining Spears that have shown up. All from stuff that...
What do you mean the first 3 that have shown up? How many more are showing up?
Well, I was about to say, all of this stuff that's sat on the table here is stuff that I've already owned. Like, it's come out of storage. I haven't paid for a thing here.
I'm not sure I believe that, given I saw
you
taking plastic off some boxes recently.
Look, those 2 boxes over there, the other 2 support weapons...
About this.
I got they were released in 2010. And they don't sell them in store anymore, so I can't have bought them anywhere to get them that way.
Yes, you can.
They come in plain white boxes from mail order now because that's the 4th edition or 5th edition artwork. Mm-hmm. Anyway, my point, and they're metal models as well, not fine cast. That's how old they are. Anyway, so the additions for this army will be minimal, but I have a boatload of them here already. I basically need to buy 6 more jet bikes to finish those conversions for those Shining Spears. So this army at the moment will be able to be fielded instantly. I've got all the HQs I need, all the troops I need. I've got heavy support. I've got heavy support coming out the wazoo, actually. 3 flyers, which I'm hedging my bets on because I was considering buying a couple of flyers to add more, but I'm expecting an amendment via an FAQ to stop me taking more than 3 flyers, so I'm not going to buy anymore until I see what that FAQ looks like.
Yeah.
As much as I would have them and use them for other armies, at the moment, I'd rather not spend the money. Mm-hmm. So that's an easy call to make. But the army at the moment is from a collection. And everything here that's going to get painted will be able to be used with the majority of the rest of this collection. So as the game changes and evolves, like the support weapons I'm building at the moment, I haven't glued the guns on so that if the vibro cannon stops being a really good gun, I can just pull it off and swap it for one of the other guns. Mm-hmm. So
they're just magnetized.
They're not even that. The way the Games Workshop kit builds is, without getting too far into it, it's a little bracket that you kind of just slot the gun on top of.
Okay.
And as long as you don't put the second crew member on the gun, then the gun comes off really freely.
Yeah.
And originally I was going to put the extra crewman on the gun because the instructions tell you to. Oh, sorry, they don't tell you to. They give you the option to, purely to mess with a local hobbyist, Courtney, because he had to build his 11 Orc mech guns with a whole bunch of extra grot crew that don't do anything in the game, but you have to have them for the purposes of the footprint of the gun. So I was going to model them onto the gun purely to go, no, I've got extra crew, but I don't have to have them separate. And I've already told him that, and that was a kind of a running gag. But now, because if I glue the crewman on, I can't get the gun off.
Yeah.
So I had to... Thankfully, I hadn't glued the crewman on when I was building it, but I had to chop both of his hands off and replace them with other parts because when they're modelled on the gun, he's meant to be manning a control panel.
Yeah.
So instead, I got the parts from the same kit that the hands you meant to give him if he's not on the gun. So I had to chop his hands off and replace them. So there's going to be a unique crew member in that unit, which is fine. Back on topic.
Counts as conversion.
It does. Yeah, so when you have a collection available to you, there's a lot less pressure on you to be able to adapt because you do have the options. However, if you're just picking a new army from scratch, I think like I've already said, the aesthetics of it become the initial point of reference, and then you have to decide what you want to get out of the hobby before your first 1,000 points, or and I'm sure other games are very, like Age of Sigmar is 1,000 points. Your first starter crew for Malifaux, you're normally talking 4 to 8 models there, maybe an extra support blister or box. All of the games kind of have a starting point, like a minimum number, and I think once you get to that point, you'll have probably decided whether you like that army or not, and then you can either expand on that and pick a direction that you want to take for it, whether it is going to be a collection like my Eldar have become, or whether it's a case of, no, I want to build this for tournaments, I want to play a competitive army, so the units I've picked so far are good, or they're average, or they're bad, and this is how I'm going to adjust that. So I think understanding what your goal is for the new army is also really important.
Yeah, so I guess looking at it, if there are models that you're particularly drawn to, there's nothing wrong with kind of using that as the basis of the army that you're going to choose.
Absolutely.
But from there, buying the codex or
whatever army book or rule book,
and really reading it really thoroughly and getting as much information as you can as to how it all works and how it works together and how the combos that there might be there, that kind of thing, that can then influence how you build the army.
Yeah.
Within the particular army genre that you've chosen.
Yeah. I also think that that's a really good step to avoid wasted purchases. I don't think there's any such thing as a truly wasted purchase. If you bought the model because you like it, there's no waste in it. And No,
it's when people who don't know the hobby go into the shop and go, I know he plays Tau and I've got a budget of $60 to spend on his, Easter present, whatever. I'll just get that because that's $60 and it's Tau. So
it must be fine.
Yeah.
I think that.
So wish lists come in handy.
And look, Games Workshop do them. They always release one at the end of the year that you can fill out for.
Yeah, but you know what else there is? Paper and pen. Just write it down.
Yeah, but you can do it all through the online store and everything. Like I say, the goal though, I don't think you can establish a goal for yourself if you're new to the hobby, especially because you're not in the hobby at that point. You're sort of trying to decide whether you want to get fully involved. So at that point, it is a collection scenario where you're going, cool, I like that model. How do I, and if you're lucky, you'll be in a store or somewhere which is, hey, I really like that model. How do I play it?
Yeah, I guess I like that model. The thing that goes with that is I think even when you're first starting, it's do you just want to collect the models and paint them, or do you actually want to play with the models? Because there are some models that you can't just buy one of.
No, that is very, very true.
And the other thing is, while you really may like that particular model, do you actually want to paint 200 of them?
that is also a factor.
So, and if you're brand new to painting and you've never painted anything before, and painting doesn't light you up, maybe you need to think about whether or not orcs are a good fit for you.
But it doesn't even have to be 200 orcs. I mean, those 3 Crimson Hunters that are sat here, I love the aircraft. They're a beautiful model. It's a really lovely design.
Yeah.
It's one of Games Workshop's designs that actually might even fly in reality. Plenty of them wouldn't. The idea of painting 3 of them, because they're decent sized and they're not super intricate, but they're big flat panels of armor.
I think flat panels seem so much easier.
But see, already I'm concocting airbrush solutions to try and paint them to make them look nice. Yeah. And I've seen plenty of players who get involved in the hobby early, buy a big kit, and then get disappointed that it doesn't instantly look amazing.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of money to invest on a big kit when you might not be ready for that. Our son's painted a whole bunch of Space Marine style models. And since he won't hear this, I can say that he's getting a Dreadnought for his birthday, a Redemptor. that's the next step up in sort of scale for him to learn how to be a better painter, where he's done infantry, but he hasn't done a vehicle yet.
He hasn't, but he did paint a Death Star. Actually, maybe it was a Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. I was going to say, we haven't got a Death Star model, it's a Millennium Falcon.
Sorry, I'm hoping that when Mike edits this, he'll take out the giant paws, but he just gives him his giant paws with this look of, really? Have we got a Death Star in this house? Yeah, no, I think it's a Millennium Falcon. Look, it's a Star Warsy thing.
And he's painted Gundams and those sorts of things as well. But it's a natural progression at that point for him to scale up and do something a bit bigger, rather than just going and dumping like $250 on a knight or one of the Demon Primarchs or something like that. Or, if you're just getting into bolt action, getting a few infantry squads and the basics required to play the game makes a whole bunch more sense than just going and buying the box with like 5 tanks in it.
Yeah, it does. I guess if you're getting into bolt action, then the questions are things like, well, which country do I want to play?
Yeah.
And getting, which is
early,
similar to what
mid, or late war.
Yeah.
What technology is available,
but that's similar to what I was talking about before, as far as the 40k and getting the codex or the rulebook that goes with that particular army, is looking at, well, what is their role that particular country played in any of the roles, or how are they depicted in this game?
Well, I think part of it for something like bolt action, it gets a bit more complicated because with 40k or Age of Sigmar or those sort of fantasy style genre games, it's going to come down to which looks the coolest to you, with no real right or wrong answer. When you start talking about a historical game like bolt action, I think you're going to be vaguely interested in history a lot of the time. Not necessarily for all players, because I'm sure some play it for the game. But I think, speaking to the players, a huge cross-section of them are interested in, past history and World War II. They're interested in recreating those events for them to play in. So I think your own natural sort of understandings of the historical situation will help influence what you're actually going to pick. So the aesthetics don't necessarily come into it as much as...
I don't know. I think it's
although
a bit
to be
of
fair,
both.
I was about to say, to be fair, I have no support or sympathy or anything like that for the German war machine through World War II. However, if I were to play bolt action, I'd actually want to play the Germans because I love the Tiger tank. It's not the best tank. It's a lot of historians agree it's well overhyped, but I love the style of it. And I think the aesthetics of a lot of the German uniforms are cool. I think a lot of the style of that. I do not support the political stances and what they did, but I like them from a game point of view. I like the style on them. And that's a real conflict for me because I can't make those two ideas mesh to make me take the step to actually play them.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And there's, sort of that whole dissonance that happens there between...
it's a game compared to...
Oh, see, I struggle with some of that stuff too.
Yeah.
So, but, I guess some of the ethical thoughts and considerations that go into that. But I do still see a fair few people who want to play a particular... I'm just going to use country, but want to play as a particular country based on the uniforms or the tanks or the guns or even the fact that they want to play in that because they want to build this particular board in order to play in this setting.
And I've seen a few of them. So, again, keeping in the bolt action theme, there's a lot of elite German troops compared to the more conscript horde styles that the Japanese and some of the Soviet forces feature.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're actually wanting to get into bolt action, you might then slant towards a German or maybe a paratrooper force or something like that, where it's a bit more elite, so that you've got less models to paint, but you want to play the game, as opposed to if you go, I really want to play an Axis force, but I want to play a horde. I don't want to play Germans. I want to play a horde. Okay, well, I'm going to make a late war Japanese army, which is a higher model count. So, like I say, I think aesthetics, what the model looks like, doesn't play as much a part in historical games because the aesthetics you're interested in is the historical aesthetics, not the model aesthetics, if that makes sense.
But I think there's other things that go with it, like my great-granddad was part of the, whatever army. I was going to say Welsh for some reason, but I don't actually know if Wales had an army in World War Two.
Well, the United Kingdom did deploy many troops from many different parts of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that there is a Welsh detachment or division somewhere. I can't quote it.
Yeah.
And we apologise for that. But I think the aesthetics of it is always going to play a significant role in your at least your first engagement. You know, even looking at something like Malifaux, where you've got that sort of gothic horror Victorian era steampunk style, there's something there for everyone. If you like
I love the Malifaux models.
You know, if you want to go that steampunk route, there's plenty of cool steampunky type stuff. They've now got the 10 Thunders. They've had them for a little while now, but the 10 Thunders are a separate faction, which is your Yakuza, Japanese Triad, Mafia, Oriental era stuff.
I don't think you're allowed to say Oriental.
Well, I'm not in direction to a person, but I'm talking about for that era, it was the Orient. And I'm not meaning that to be disrespectful or rude. And then you've also got the demon side of things and the necromancy side of things. You've got zombies that happen, witchcraft and wizardry and that sort of thing. So Malifaux really does have something for everyone. And I think your own personal biases and preferences are going to make you go, oh, I really love that stuff, therefore that's the faction I'm going to collect.
Yeah, so I know for me, I would be going for steampunk with the smallest number of models possible.
Yeah, so you might go Rail Crew, or you wouldn't play, Ramos isn't in the game anymore, but Ramos used to be the Spider Swarm, so you'd have dozens of these little...
Nope. What's got 4 models or less?
Yep. But like the Colette Dubois with the Showgirls, I think is a crew that you'd really love for the look of them.
Because that's the one of the decks that you just got, isn't it? Did you get the Showgirls deck?
Yeah, I got the so not the character deck, but the actual game deck, the Showgirl deck. Yeah. So yeah, I think there's definitely stuff there that I didn't,
which I love that
the
deck,
Showgirl
by
deck.
The way.
Yeah. I didn't buy any of the Resurrectionists when we first got into Malifaux because there's whole undead thing, zombies, and didn't do anything for me. Whereas I went down the road of the Arcanists, which was all the magic and the steampunk stuff, the Outcasts for all the mercenaries, and at that stage, Masaki was still part of the Outcasts. The 10 Thunders weren't a thing. Her, Victoria, Hans, like all of those sort of mercenaries I can put into different factions. And they're never born, because the whole idea of these creepy demons being drawn from your worst nightmares and being brought into reality was cool. Whereas other people I know delved into the guild who wanted that Western gunslinger part of the game. Yeah. So, and there's no right or wrong answer there. So, because it all comes back to, I really love the look of that model. I like the style and the theme, so that's what I'm going to buy.
Yep. Make it work.
Yeah. Once you actually decide, though, on your faction, I think you have to then make an active decision, once you've got a bit of knowledge about the game at least, where you're going to take that. If it's just for playing with your mates, if it's for competing in a local tournament, if you want to go and compete on the international stage, I think there's a whole host of questions that have to be raised, because that'll then determine what models you buy, when you need to buy them by, whether you're going to convert them heavily or whether you need to build them by the book. For certain games, things like War Machine don't do conversions a great deal. For official events, the conversion rules are very, very strict, in that basically you can't, or you can, but it's things like reposing, and it's a fairly tough line that they walk for Steamroller. So once you've made that call to pick an army, they're the next sorts of considerations that I think you have to take into account. Am I playing this with my buddies at home, and we're all just going to play what we want to play, and that's the end of it? Okay, cool. Keep buying the ones you think look cool, and if someone decides to start an arms race, then you obviously need to readjust your own expectations and, maybe consider changing what you're buying and building. Are you playing local tournaments? Okay, well, I'd suggest going and actually visiting a local tournament without playing, seeing what types of armies people are playing, how heavily they're relying on what they see on the internet. Is it a cool, like hobby tournament, or is it a
more competitive event?
4-round ball buster was the phrase I was going to use.
Yeah, and I thought a more competitive event might be a better description.
Then obviously you need to reassess what you're doing. And there's no reason you can't do both. But understanding your own motivations as to why you've gotten into that army is important.
Yeah, I think that the people who are just starting out,
It's to play with friends and family.
it's just, it's either to collect models, in which case really doesn't
Do what you
matter.
want,
But the questions I've been seeing have been people who are just getting into it. There's a question that popped up that I'm not really sure whether or not this is an appropriate forum. Hopefully I left a big enough gap so you can maybe cut it out. So somebody put, should I play Tau, or there was another option. Can't remember what the other option was. And the response back from someone was, yes, but does anybody actually enjoy playing Tau? And if you do enjoy playing Tau, would anybody actually choose to play against you? Because who'd choose to play against Tau? I thought that was an interesting
I know.
comment.
I actually commented on that one and said, pick what you like.
Yeah, I know you said pick what you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing the same thing and thinking, and you're part of the problem in this community.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't help a new player. That immediately makes them go, oh, well, you're essentially telling them that what they like is wrong and they should do something else or they're not going to find games.
Well, I think it also starts this sort of preconception around different armies, but also around different players.
Yeah.
And it's similar
that's
to
it.
the kind of thing that you have around, I saw something else recently, which was around War Machine and the preconceived ideas around the kind of people that play War Machine.
Yeah.
And I've spoken quite vocally about the fact that the War Machine players that I've met here in Perth, who are not only from Perth, but sort of come from
Singapore and parts of Malaysia and whatnot.
Yeah. They've all been really, really lovely guys. They have actually all been men. And they're really, they're kind and generous with their time and their knowledge, and they're
They play hardcore against each other.
but I don't think it's hardcore.
Well, I think the game encourages the...
It's a competitive
Yes.
game, but they're still laughing during the game.
Oh,
They're
absolutely.
still smiling. They're talking to each other. There's no
malice.
There's no malice. So there's trash talk, but it's not
Unless it's
with
Earl,
malice.
because Earl brings lots of turtles and they don't like turtles.
I'm not going there. So I wonder the same kind of thing with, but honestly, who wants to play against Tau? Because anybody who plays Tau
they're that guy, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't see that either.
No, I mean, to use Tau as a specific example for 40k, Tau is a really polarizing army because it only does one thing, and it doesn't matter how... Or I say it only does one thing. I made them do something else with okay results, and I've seen plenty of people do really well with them. But because of the way they interact in the game, they can be very polarizing for some players who don't take them into account when building an army. So the Tau shoot, and that's kind of their shtick. That's what they do. And they do it really well, and they do it in such a way that that's kind of all they do. They don't really do combat. They have no psychic ability, and a lot of the Tau armies that get built in competitive play tend to be castles, so they're very static. Now, the best Tau are the ones who are mobile and do what Tau do in the stories, but a lot of people can default it back to, I get to deploy the army and I just roll lots of dice until you die. And I think those are the ones that the average community member goes, oh, Tau suck, because they do that. That's not necessarily the fault of the player, but it is an easy... If you're not comfortable with the game's movement component, it's a very easy fallback to make to go, I know they do this, they do it really well, I don't want to assault, therefore the way I win games is to shoot. Therefore,
I'm going to stand here and
if I make a nice big castle that makes it really hard for you to come and get me, I win games. And it's a really logical, straightforward process. The guys who are winning tournaments with Tau generally don't castle. They do it with high mobility suits and lots of shenanigans type stuff. And those are the guys who are the high-end players who've learnt how to control the movement phase with the Tau as much as the shooting phase. So even the assault phase to some degree. But I think that's the reason Tau gets such a bad rap in the 40k community, is because they interact essentially in one part of the game, and then when you try and charge them, they interact the same way again, and then if they roll enough dice, they win, and if you survive, you win. And I think that's what most of the community finds a bit polarizing for them. And
I
yet,
don't know. To me, that just makes sense. Like, a ballet dancer does ballet well. You wouldn't expect to go to see Swan Lake and expect them to break out in hip hop because what they do is ballet.
Yeah.
Tao shoots. It's what they do.
Yeah.
So,
But the thing is, they're so... I don't want to use one-dimensional because they're not, but in a broader sense, they're so one-dimensional in their play style. Almost none of the other 40k armies do that. Like, all of them can do the other things to some degree. I mean, I'd probably go so far as to say Gene Stealer Cult don't shoot especially well. But you can build a shooty Gene Stealer Cult army.
you can build a movie Tao army.
You can. But movement's one that's hands in just about every game. Movement is in the hands of the player. If you play a game with Tau and all you do is roll a bucket of dice in the corner and you lose, you can turn around and go, oh, well, the dice shafted me. If you have an army that relies on mobility to control objectives and take, different fire angles and protect itself through line of sight, if you misplay and you put that model in the wrong spot, the dice didn't screw you. And so there's a level of accountability that comes when you start playing those dynamic style of forces. And that's just not for 40k, that's for everything.
I suppose the reason that I brought this up is because I think that there still exist these kinds of stereotypes out there. And what I'm saying is don't allow other people's ideas around what stereotypes are there to impact whether or not you're choosing to play.
Particularly on social media.
Well, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you post up on Facebook in the Warhammer 40,000 group, hi, I'm thinking about playing Tau or Chaos Space Marines, which is I think what the other choice was.
Can't remember.
And you're in Australia, and then someone from Michigan, United States goes, no, all Tau are terrible, play Chaos. Why should someone on the other side of the world, who you're almost certainly never going to meet and play, barring the most unusual of circumstances, have an impact on your own enjoyment and what you do with your time and money?
So, and I know that you've actually just done this, which brings me to why ask on the internet? Because when it comes down to it, what do you want to play? So, and if I'm asking on the internet, okay, so this was Chaos Space Marines, Tau, those were the two.
I think those were the two,
Those were the two options. So you've got people who play Space Marines who are going to go, play Space Marines, they're the best.
Yep.
Or people who are going to play Tau, who are going to say, play Tau, they're the best. Or people who have got really strong negative reactions
the naysayers
to either Chaos or Tau, because anybody who doesn't play one of those, they're not going to jump in there with strong positive responses.
Yeah.
What you're going to get when you put something on social media is generally people share their negative experiences rather than sharing the positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the only way you're going to share the positive is if it is what you're passionate about. So I don't know, which brings me to, why did you ask on social media what colour you should paint your new army?
So, yeah, ignoring the context of this build for these Eldar, the Eldar army in question, what the list looks like, I'm not 100% certain yet. I've got a rough breakdown in my head of what it's going to be.
I hope it looks something like the however many models that are staring at me at the moment, to be honest.
Yes, I'm trying to put the Night Spinners into the army. Yes, the Crimson Hunters are going in the army. Yes, the Shining Spear jet bikes, which I need to buy 6 more of, are going in the army. All the Dire Avengers are going in the army. The Avatar's going in the army. The Reapers and Rangers I'm not so sure on, but because I had to get my files out to clean up the metal parts for the Shining Spear conversions, I figured I might as well do the metal ones at the same time. The support weapons I've got a theory for as well, and they're cheap, so I figured while I'm in a building mood, I'll build them as well. So yeah, most of this will go in the army as a test case for some of my theories and more interesting ideas with the game. But the point of this army was actually something you made on, I don't know whether it was a podcast or live, about me not actively competing at tournaments anymore, with me playing the Magpie and taking what I felt like and random things. So the effort for this army is actually around building a competitive, getting myself an 8th edition competitive army. Hence the 3 Crimson Hunters.
Which will potentially be going to Nova next year.
Yeah, depending on what goes on. But the colour scheme thing is a personal one, and I think, obviously with historical style games, you can still paint whatever you want, but I know that a lot of the historical gamers really like to get the colours right, like the camouflage and the unit markings down to the official olive drab for the the different pants and uniforms.
Well, certain historical gamers take it incredibly seriously, down to when they're painting the camouflage, making sure that the ratio and the scale is exactly perfect for
or the Charlemagne army that we saw with the knights, where each of the knights had its own individual heraldry that was modelled off the recorded documents from the 15th century, and maybe not the 15th century, I might have got that wrong, but that level of attention to detail, at that point, that's a hobbyist. Like that, it's more, or rather, it is just as important to them how good it looks on the table and how accurate it is as to what it actually does.
Yeah.
That's about a recreation then, not necessarily about a war game. When I put my question up, which was in our private patrons Facebook page, so it didn't go to the community at large. It only went to our patrons. Part of it was a level of indecisiveness on myself. So the original intent for this army was to paint it Bieltan, which is essentially white and green. And my original Eldar army back from 2nd edition was Bieltan. Mm-hmm. And over the years, parts of it have been stripped, and I actually regret it a lot in stripping the majority of that army.
I don't know, your painting was pretty rubbish then.
It was, but there's a lot of nostalgia attached to parts of it. And I've still got some of it, but yeah, there's a few of it that I regret doing. So originally I was going to paint it in green and white. And then I remembered that the goal of the army was to actually make a competitive army. Mm-hmm. And I ended up in a situation where part of the army was Bieltan, part of the army was Alatok, and part of the army was, I think it was going to end up Saim Han. Saim Han is red, Alatok is blue, and Bieltan is green.
Add a couple more and you got a rainbow.
Exactly. And I'm one of these gamers who, through my own preference, wants it all to match. Mm-hmm. Now, the Crimson Hunters...
at least to tie in together.
Yeah. The Crimson Hunters are aspect warriors, so they don't have to tie in. They're crimson. It's in the name. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be crimson regardless. And they will go into any of my other existing Eldar armies because they're going to be crimson. And they're Crimson Hunters. The Grav tanks, the support weapons, the Rangers, the Farseers, the Warlocks, the Autarchs, all of the core Eldar units, I've already got in black, in yellow, a few in green. I've got them in red because I've got a Saim Han army out there I built back in the late 2000s. And the idea of having to, say for something like the Wave Serpents, this army probably wants 2 of them. Now I've got 10 Wave Serpents from for the past 20 years of gaming, but 6 of them are black and 2 of them are yellow, and they're all the different colors. And while I know there's literally nothing stopping me going and getting a couple of those Wave Serpents, there's 2 yellow ones sat in the tub down there that I was using for practice.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping me putting them in this army, but at a competitive tournament, that would really bother me. Yeah. I couldn't do it. And I can't articulate why it would bother me, but I can't bring myself to mismatch them because that's not the right army.
Yeah, and I think when we mark scoring for painting, one of the questions we ask is...
Does it look like an army?
Is it consistent? Does it look like a consistent army? And so so obviously if you've got mismatched units, then it's not going to look like that. How do you think it would go in a painting scoring with having the crimson with, whatever else you've got?
Well, part of it also comes down to tying it in with like the basing, and there's other parts that you can tie them in with. And that's always been the paradox of an aspect warrior army for the Eldar, because the aspect warriors all have their set colour schemes, and they're not set in stone, but they're traditional colour schemes, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. So my Dark Reapers will be black and purple, my Striking Scorpions. Ironically, the most recent ones I've done are brown, not green, but they should be green. The Banshee should be bone, the Dire Avenger should be blue, the Crimson Hunter should be crimson.
So which colours of the rainbow have you got left?
Fire Dragons are orange and red and yellow. Warp Spiders are black and red. Swooping Hawks are blues, like pale blues, whites and yellows, like that sun and sky type thing. Shining Spears are knights, so they're black, blue and white.
Purple. I'm thinking indigo and violet is what's missing.
Well, purple's in the Dark Reapers. They're black and purple.
Oh, yep.
And that's kind of my, the biggest problem I had with my Bieltan army all those years ago was it was all aspect warriors, so it didn't look like an army. It did look like a Skittles bowl. So I'm making a conscious choice to put other units in that will tie it all together and make sure the basing matches. Now, the Night Spinners that are in this army want to be Alatok, which is basically they sit at the back of the board, they get minuses to hit, and they should be like a mottled blue.
Mm-hmm.
But having 3 tanks in mottled blue means I need a HQ to separate them out, which means one of the Farseers or Warlocks has to be painted in blue. And then putting that into an army where the rest of it is in green, just... First of all, it's wrong with me, but second of all, I'm thinking long-term for the collection as well, because then I'm sat there going, well, I've got these 3 tanks and a character that are in mottled blue and nothing else that goes with them.
Yeah.
So now I need to think about how do I bring that into its own army so that I can run Alatok by itself? And then the other part of the conversation is future-proofing, because at the moment, Alatok is the default Eldar selection for everyone, because it is the best faction trait, or it's arguably the best faction trait.
In your opinion?
Well, I don't think it is. But most of the internet does. That's why I said arguably. So should I just paint them all in Alatok colours? Well, I don't really want to paint them in mottled camouflage blue. But also, given what we've seen with the new Space Marine Codex and the Raven Guard, I'm expecting the chapter tactic for the Raven Guard to influence what the Craftworld attribute is for the Alatok, because they were basically the same. So is there any point in me building an army now, knowing that we want to try to go to Nova in 12 months' time, that I start painting blue and then all of a sudden 6 months from now, 9 months from now, just before the event, the new codex drops and oh look,
it's now
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I'm also a stickler for making, if they painted a Craftworld colour, they should probably be used that Craftworld. And I know that you don't have to do that, and we don't enforce that at tournaments. Warhammer World do. So there's all these different things that go into my head when I pick a paint scheme, which is one of the reasons I went to the patrons group, because I went, okay, cool. The resolution for this is actually really simple. I'll just paint them a colour that's not one of the official colours.
Yeah.
Okay, how do I rule out colours? I don't want to do a red army, because I've done at least 2 red armies I can think of. In my Sisters of Battle and my Siam Han Eldar. I'm not doing a yellow again, because my Eandon is a small force, and I never want to paint yellow ever again. I don't want to paint black, because my Ulthway are black, and black's a really boring colour scheme, and despite it being fast, I don't want to do another black army. I've already said I don't want to paint the mottled blue with the bone, it's like a sea blue, I suppose, and then it uses like a blue camouflage pattern. With bone, that's a Alatok, and then I don't want to do, after saying no to yellow, I'm not doing white. So now it's, okay, well now let's look at what other craft worlds are in the lists. And the current codex has, I think, 5 or 6 different ones listed in there. One of them is purple and green, which is quite possibly the worst colour combination that I can come up with at the moment.
Yep.
So that was...
Although it does get you purple in for the...
It does. There's like a pinky purple colour with, I think it was black for the helmet, which isn't terrible, but I don't really know how painting pink grav tanks is going to work.
Yeah.
I suppose it's closer to purple than pink, but it's still, I don't know, I like the idea of painting it in purple. Which kind of leaves me the final 3 from this range, which I don't mind. One of them is a grey bodysuit with an orange helmet and orange armour panels, which...
I don't like.
I think it looks good on the infantry, but again, I think once you scale that up to tanks, I actually think like grey tanks, I might as well just leave them grey.
I know a lot of people who think that's a great option.
Paint the turrets orange and be done with it.
That's it.
So I kind of ruled that one out straight away because, again, it's a little bit close to black for my taste. So I want something that's a bit more vibrant, a bit more interesting. I
will just say that black doesn't have to be boring.
No, it doesn't.
If you think about the army...
Yeah. Oh, look, there's been some amazing... Don's Iron Hands from Heresy were absolutely stunning. And it works for that style of, like, the Space Marines were done with, like, a rub and buff paint that basically made them look like an oil slick, which was amazing. It doesn't work for the Eldar aesthetic, in my opinion, because they don't tend to do a lot of metallics, which makes them look a bit stranger when you do. And if you look at the samples, which I'll post this picture up in the show notes, there's almost no metallics used on any of these models.
No, they look really flat, and I really don't like any.
And I tend to incorporate like a weathered gold or a bronze for a lot of the weaponry, just to break them up and give them another point of definition. But it basically left me the final two, which were an whole orange body with like a black helmet with like a gold face.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 100% sold on, but I haven't got an orange army, so there's a level of me that
Something
goes,
different.
hey, look, I haven't done that before. The other one is a turquoise blue with a white helmet with a black face mask and bone weapons, which I actually really like. However, the one thing that's putting me off it is I actually have a pale blue, I suppose it's a mid blue, not a pale blue, Eldar army already for my Corsairs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of going, I've already done a similar colour scheme. It's not the same. This is like I'd probably lean heavily on the turquoise tone rather than the blue tone to make it that little bit different. But when I got to that point, to the end of this, I went, okay, well, what other colour combinations can I come up with? Yep, that's how many I came up with. So, that's one of the reasons I went to social media with it. I went, okay, cool. My creative brain isn't coming up with another colour scheme. These ones here all have their own idiosyncrasies that I either don't like or have mental hurdles to jump through to accommodate.
Yeah.
But I want to paint this army. And I don't know how to do it. And I don't know... A lot of the time when I've built and paint armies in the past, I know what I want them to look like at the end.
Yeah.
And this is one of the few times I've gotten to it and gone, I actually don't know what I want this to look like at the end. Because another part of this is what bases it's going to go on. So this army will go on snow bases to match all of my Drakari, all of my Harlequins, all of my Corsairs, and what I've slowly been moving all of my Craftforward units over the years as I've been rebasing them. So you've also got to take into account the snow basing that's going to go with these models. So, yeah, going to the internet was actually looking for a source of inspiration, not for someone to tell me what was what.
Mm.
Now, the other one that one of our patrons suggested was my Mira, which is
I love.
one of the hardest colour schemes to get right because it transitions from...
I feel like you need a challenge.
It transitions from sea green to like a mid blue.
Mm.
And with black helmets from memory.
Yep, black helmets, white face plates, and kind of that really lovely green. It's like that colour shift green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I say, the official colour scheme I think is a green to blue transition from bottom to top. Was it green at the bottom and
green at the bottom,
blue at the top?
Blue at the top, with
the back veins.
The back veins in that. Well, like I say, that feels like the green colour shift paint. I feel like it could be like the green, the green with the purple. I mean, I don't know that it is, but I just feel like that could work well.
Well, there's green blue colour shift paint. Colour shift paint doesn't really work on infantry. It needs those big flat surfaces to really shine. And I've actually done test models of my Mira in the past. And let's say they weren't as successful as I'd hoped they'd be, because that transition from blue to green is really hard.
Yeah, look, I bet it is. I think the reason that I like this more than the others is that the colours look more metallic.
Mm.
And whereas the other ones, to me, just look really flat. And I know out of the ones that you chose, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to... actually, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it.
Brazil.
Yeah.
Which is the turquoise blue
one.
Yeah.
That would be my favourite of the one that you chose. But you have some reservations about painting female warriors.
Well, it's not even painting female warriors. It's the... so each of these obviously has their own little... not even chapter, it'd be a paragraph in the Eldar Codex, kind of giving you a snapshot of what the Craftwood's about.
Mm-hmm.
One of them's built basically a planet-killing weapon. One of them's all about, living and sneaking and hiding in the webway and then going out and raiding things. One of them's a bunch of slightly depressed, victims of the Eye of Terror and the birth of Slanesh. And Ibrasil is now, to be clear, it's not described as a matriarchal society. It is said, though, that there is a higher population of female Eldari on the Craftworld.
Has more female warriors than usual, known for howling banshee shrines, hunters of ancient tech and doomsday artifacts to use to ensure the Eldar win.
Yeah. So part of the issue I have with picking Ibrasil, or however you pronounce it.
Ibrasil. I don't know why.
Is to do with some of the politics and some of the stuff that's been creeping into the hobby lately, because the Eldar models are some of the most gender diverse, because there are female torsos and female parts for different units. Not for every unit, but there are for some. And because this says, lots of it's female, part of me would actually want to go through and try and reflect that in the armies, if I could. That's not always possible. Now, getting separate torsos, I think you get 2 female and 3 male in the Dire Avenger box. Now, I've got 15 Dire Avengers. So for me to get 15 female torsos would require me to buy 8 boxes of 5 Dire Avengers. That's not going to happen. So you start making compromises on the fluff a little bit to go, you know what? In aspect armor, you can't tell whether they're male or female. That's the whole point of it. They're a warrior monk dressed in their ritual gear. Who's wearing it isn't relevant. So you can kind of fob off parts of that to kind of go, well, yeah, like the Dark Reapers, yep, most of them are women. Can you tell? No, because they're in 7-foot tall armor that, carries around a missile launcher. Who's to say? But then you start getting some of the politics stuff that people like to bring into these things, where you start going, oh, you're playing an army of women to pander to women, or you're not making them female models because you don't want to paint female models, or, there's a whole bunch of that sort of mentality that I feel has crept into parts of the hobby, which just frustrates me because I'm not interested in pandering and I'm not interested in demeaning or diminishing anyone. I just thought it was a cool color scheme and part of the story. Like, I like Howling Banshees. I'm going to buy some of the new Howling Banshees. I've got tons, I think I've got 20 or maybe even 30 of them out in the dungeon. So I want to use them. And people will have seen me use them at tournaments recently. I took them to one, not 3 or 4 months ago. Has that got anything to do with politics or any of those other sort of silly opinions that end up in this hobby? No.
So why are you letting it bother you?
Because I'm conscious that we are public entities. So that actually plays a factor in my decision-making process.
You're never going to please everyone.
No, that is true.
So, there's always going to be someone that's, so say you play one that doesn't have strong females in. People can complain about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's a silly thing to be concerned about.
I really think it is.
But
it comes down to
you know what I mean.
Over orange, that people are going to think that you're too left wing.
Yeah. But that was something that actually ran through my head when I was looking at the colour scheme going.
That's why I brought it up.
And
that's a real shame. Like, I think that it's a shame that kind of this... Obviously, I believe strongly in feminism and I believe strongly in equality and equity. But it's a shame that the kind of agenda as far as trying to make sure that women are represented in this hobby has led to a point where people are too afraid to play women in this hobby because of what that might be seen as.
Yeah.
Like, so much of feminism has gone too far that it's actually negatively impacting.
Yeah.
The whole thing is have the ability so that, well, does it really matter if the model that's on the table is a man or a woman?
Exactly. And when you go through like the Dire Avengers that I've just finished building, you actually get alternate torsos in there so that you can build the Exarchs. But I still put all the females in. And that wasn't me going, I must put the females in. That was, I'm going to snip all these off the sprue and glue them together. I didn't once think, I need to make sure I've got 50-50 distribution. I did it because the models come like that and I built them. And that's, yeah, it's stupid to have that as part of a consideration for painting an army, but it's one that ran through my head. So, be interested to hear what everyone has to say and think about, first of all, the colour schemes. I don't really want to degenerate down into that whole topic of diversity in the gaming, and at least in the miniatures, and I think everyone knows where we stand on it as a community.
I'm thinking about where I stand on it at the moment. My brain's just kind of going with the, I think it's...
We want women coming and being part of the community.
Yeah, exactly, most definitely. And at the same time...
And not just women. Whoever wants to play.
Yeah.
I don't care 2 cents about any of that garbage. If you want to come and play dice and have fun...
Okay, I know what you mean by that, but let me just rephrase, because what you said could have been considered really quite insulting.
But the fact that it could have been considered insulting, it bothers me as well, because it's not intended that way.
No, but you phrased it really badly.
Okay.
So what you're saying is the people who we want to come to events are people who enjoy gaming.
Yeah.
So our events
Nothing
are
else
open
matters.
and inclusive to everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of, gender, race, religion,
Yeah.
sexual orientation, any
I
of
don't
that
care.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't care, it's that we're open to everyone. So we don't want anyone to be discriminated or feel that they can't come because of that, and we're also not trying to attract any particular
Yeah,
group.
exactly.
The only group that we're trying to make our events inclusive for
Gamers.
are gamers.
Yeah.
And whether you identify as a gamer or you're a person who happens to enjoy playing games, who doesn't necessarily identify as a gamer, you're also welcome too. So,
But anyway.
so, but like, I should be able to. So we talked about Malifaux before,
Yep.
and the Showgirls. I should be able to play the Showgirls if I feel that that's an army that I am drawn to.
Yep.
But at the same time, you should be able to play the Showgirls.
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean...
But also, you should be able to play the strongest male... I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Well, the irony is I'd say guild, but most of the masters there are female.
Okay. Well,
Malifaux's actually really diverse in that regard, where there's a mix of good and bad heroes and villains, male and female.
what I'm trying to say is that it's actually not wrong for men to want to play strong male
No,
armies
there's nothing wrong with that.
either, in the same way that it's not wrong for women to want to play strong male armies.
No.
They are effectively toy soldiers on a table.
Yeah.
And play the army that you feel drawn to
Yeah,
for whatever reason.
Yep.
And don't feel the need to analyse it as much as Michael has over whether or not he should paint his models turquoise.
Yeah. Look, I'm willing to admit I've overthought this, and part of it is because of our public face and, the podcast and the events that we run.
And part of it is also because you believe in inclusivity so much, but you don't believe that it should have to be publicly announced as being inclusive because you think everything should be inclusive.
Yeah.
And if you have to announce that it is inclusive, it actually means that it's not as inclusive as it should be.
Yeah. That.
So I get why you've overthought it, but I do think you've overthought it.
Yeah.
If you like turquoise, paint turquoise.
Yeah, but see, I've already got a pale blue army, and that's part of
Okay, well, then I really am back to
my mirror.
my mirror.
But see, that's blue and green, and I've got
I
blue and
know,
green.
but you like green. It is your favourite colour. And it is a really nice colour scheme.
So I can't go green and white. That's built on. I can't go green and red because that's Christmas elves. And I've already got green.
I do like Christmas. What about black and orange and go for a Halloween theme? Because
I've already got green Drakari as well. Although, to be fair, green does
I noticed you just quickly went through my black and orange.
I'm not doing a Halloween-themed army.
Why not?
I'm not putting pumpkin heads on things.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I'm sure you could get that for a Marine, like a 3D print of that. Marine head conversion, so you can do a black Space Marine with a pumpkin orange helmet. That'd be entertaining. So as you can see, the thought process for the colour scheme for this army has and is still ongoing. Like I said, I'll share this picture in the show notes on the website, so you can go and check it out, and you can weigh in on which colour scheme you think I should paint. I'm not saying no to any of them, except maybe Ilkaith, which is the green one with the purple helmet, because that's not one that's driving me to paint it at all. If you've got another suggestion that goes with green really well for like as an offset colour, I'm interested in hearing that as well. But yeah, and this is agonising over choice. It's what this
is just the paint colour.
Yeah.
So imagine the agony that people, when they're just coming into the hobby.
And it only compounds with different factions as well. I mean, the to give you the two polar extremes, the Harlequin book I think has 8 data sheets in it. The Space Marine book has like 90 something. So you go, I'm going to play Space Marines. Oh gosh. Okay, where do I start? So I think ultimately though, whatever you choose to do, the one thing to bear in mind more than anything else is it's your hobby.
Yep.
When you're picking an army, when you're picking its colour scheme, it's you. It's all about you.
Yep, it really is.
If you want to paint them pink, paint them pink. If you want to buy Tyranids and paint them fluorescent green, which we have seen,
Yes, we have.
that's completely fine. Not everyone has to like it. Not everyone has to agree with it. Not everyone has to think that it matches the stories and the fluff, if you will. If that's what you want to paint it as, they're your models. It's your money. It's your time. You do you.
If you want to paint them fluorescent pink with beautiful, pretty pretty flowers on them,
Yep.
also fine.
If you go out of your way to paint something that is set to incite negative connotations, without being too specific, in other players because you're trying to get a rise out of them, that's where I think you draw the line. Because as soon as you go out of your way to incite...
Yeah, but that's just the don't be a dick rule.
Yes, it is.
Like,
at least it's you swearing on this for once and not me.
Yeah, well, you already did have many times. But I think that's just a rule to live by.
It is, but I know players will go out of their way to do that sort of thing.
And, so there's a difference here. You just said earlier that you were talking about mounting the models on the guns to wind up Courtney.
Yes.
It's a good-natured rivalry not rivalry, but, banter.
Yeah, and I will point out I didn't do that.
Yeah, but that wasn't because you didn't want to.
No,
have
it was
the
because I
banter
didn't
with
want to
Courtney.
magnetise.
Yeah. So you don't get an out for that. There's a difference between doing that and making a decision that's actually
putting inappropriate images and
for example,
language and
painting swastikas on your army. Where obviously, if you're playing a German army in bolt action, then there's reasons for doing that, but
even then, like I would struggle with that. I know that the person playing them wouldn't necessarily be doing it to incite or provoke, but that might actually make me go, yeah, you know what? I'm okay. Like, I don't know. I don't know how I could respond to that because it has so much negativity and so many years of,
I feel like that's probably a bigger, more in-depth discussion.
It is.
In my personal opinion, playing in where it's
something historical,
where it has historical relevance.
Yeah, don't put it on your Imperial Guard or your Space Marines.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And there's arguments for the fact that the swastika has actually been around for
prior to
for so
German,
many years, and it was actually a religious symbol prior to that, and has meanings of peace and that kind of thing. So if you have that, I just wouldn't do it.
No. Don't
put something on there that you are doing to deliberately upset people.
Exactly. And
or to incite hate.
Yeah, and it's the same with like I know there's like dice that you can buy, official ones from Bolt Action and whatnot that match the armies, and things like the Waffen SS dice and the different symbols for the different regiments. They are available as dice. Bringing them and playing with your German army is fine at an event because it's it's about that recreation and it shows your faction.
Bringing them to play at an Age of Sigmar event,
not okay.
Less appropriate.
Yeah, because at that point you're doing it because hey, I've got German dice.
Yeah.
And I think that's again it comes back to common sense and being respectful of everyone, and unfortunately not everyone does that.
No.
So yeah, it's this topic is well railroaded off and gone down a weird space.
It's very unlike us to go off on tangents.
It is.
We're normally really focused and clear and concise.
It's not so bad. Could be worse. So yeah, that's kind of some of the things you can think about when selecting an army. But ultimately, I think we summed it up pretty well. It's do you.
You do you, yeah, definitely.
Pick the models you like, paint them how you like, and play with who you like.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you know why you're doing it, and you're not hurting anyone else, you do you.
Mm-hmm.
Me, I'm going to try and figure out a bloody colour scheme for this army because it's really bothering me, and I'm running out of things to build.
You've still got a Titan that needs
painting.
But
I'm a bit indecisive about the colour scheme for that as well.
Well, could you decide that? Because we're waiting on that to start recording the Titanverse YouTube series.
I know it's going to be black, red and white.
Okay.
But I'm trying to figure out how to paint marble.
Okay.
I think I've got a way. I need to buy some baby wipes. Anyway, on that note, because that's just a random thought, we hope you send us photos of the next army you build. It happens a lot over the Christmas period in early January, particularly as hobbies get expanded over that period from family and friends. So if you're starting a new army, share it in the comments, either on the website, on the Facebook post.
If you are a gamer and you have a significant other who isn't a gamer, my suggestion is in the lead up to birthdays and Christmas, just make sure you happen to mention in detail with product names and maybe serial numbers what exactly it is that you want. Maybe write it down or circle
Text
something
message,
in
email.
circle something in a Games Workshop catalogue or yeah.
Build a wish list on the Games Workshop website.
Doesn't help if you play a different game where
A lot
they
of them
don't have
A lot
catalogues.
of them have wish lists.
They don't have catalogues.
Oh, that's true. Not anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Well, interested to hear what people have to say about this topic. How do you guys think that you build your own armies when you pick a new faction? How do you
Or how did you
go
choose your
about it?
first army?
Yeah, we
Was
really
it just that you got a starter set and then all of a sudden, I'm just thinking with our son, he started out painting one Space Marine in a Games Workshop store.
and now he's got
And now
1,000
all of a
points of
sudden
Space
he's-
Marines.
Yeah, we don't actually know if he even wants to play Space Marines.
He said he didn't want to play Chaos Space Marines because he didn't like the Nurgle and the...
Yeah, but there's a lot of other...
Well, I think he's fairly safe in the assumption that Dad doesn't have Space Marines, but he has most of everything else. So if I want to try it, I probably can. It's ironic, really. I don't have Space Marines. I have to rectify that. Anyway, we'll be back in a sec to wrap up the episode.
Got 1,000 points you can borrow. You're all good.
We'll be back in just a minute.
Well, not sure if we achieved what we set out to in that episode.
I feel like there's a lot to unpack at the end of that. It got a bit heavy.
Yeah, but if nothing else, it's now left me wanting to build a Showgirls army for
Malifaux?
Malifaux. So, was not the intention of the episode.
I've
but
got the
there
old
you
metal
go.
ones, and I've got the Dark Carnival they did for the Nightmare Edition a couple of years ago.
Oh, you know I like Dark Carnival.
Well, this is you probably won't like this. So this is like flying monkeys,
Oh,
and giant killer clowns.
No.
Like it's
No.
it's literally a circus, like an evil circus clown warband, which they look amazing. But I've never like the Corforis came as a separate pack, and there's no instructions in the pack, and they're a bunch of. It's basically two flying monkeys using giant puppets on strings. How do you build them? I have no idea. So if anyone has the instructions for those, because my pack didn't come with any, I'd love to get them because that's they've been sat there a couple of years now with me going, I don't know how to build them, and the sprue scares me because this is when Malifaux went plastic relatively early in their life, and they're super detailed, true scale, 32mm, and like I saw someone build a Chihuahua model for this game with 3 pieces to scale. It's just like I had to. I built one for a friend, Perdita Ortega, and she's a gunslinger, and her hat's always been kept really low over her eyes, so you can't see her eyes. Her jaw and nose were a separate piece.
Yeah, I remember.
Jesus, your tweezers are too big.
Yeah.
Like you're having to get a Q-tip or a pin with a tiny dot of blue tack on it to pick this piece up and slide it into place. And if you put too much glue and it overflows back over the kit, you ruin it. Anyway, those the new Showgirl plastics though are really cool. So,
just so you know, I don't want those for birthday or Christmas.
I thought that was your hint.
No, definitely not.
I thought there was a however there for a second.
Oh, however, I'm happy just to get them as a random
present.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But I just want to preface it with, if you get them for me for my birthday or Christmas, I'm going to have a tantrum.
No, that's okay. Because this means now, because you want them, that means it lets me go out and buy the 3rd edition Malifaux
Oh, you were going to get that anyway.
book and cards. And okay, cool. So we've all heard that now, and I'm not going to edit that out. So
I've gone off Underworld, so we can move into this.
go back to Malifaux. Actually, to be fair, with the new warbands, like I'm seriously looking at like the warbands, the starter ones for what was the second box called? I keep thinking Dreadfane, but Dreadfane was the sort of the light version of it.
Oh gosh.
Anyway, the second game version of it, the 2 starter warbands didn't sort of hold me. Actually, to be fair, none of the
Gloom Haven?
I don't know.
Did I just make that up?
I think you made that up.
Okay.
No, the warbands in the second starter box didn't really jump out at me and go, hey, buy me. And to be fair, none of the warbands in the second wave kind of really grabbed me the way that the Wild Hunt have for the new one. Even the goblins, like the Wolf Riders, the new Wolf Riders look really cool. So maybe I have to pick up a copy of Beastgrave. Maybe. Maybe? That wasn't a no. Night Vault was the second one.
Night Vault. So where have I got Gloomshaven from?
I have no idea. It's a good name for an expansion, though.
Yeah.
I'm actually quite looking forward to seeing what Beastgrave does with the cycling of cards as well. It's going to shuffle things around. Unfortunately, looking at some of the way they're setting it up, it does mean that there's a couple of warbands who are going to suffer a little bit because they want the movement cards that came with Edition 1. So hopefully Beastgrave will give back a lot of those as universal cards quite quickly. And I also think there's going to be a lot of players that have to adjust to this new format because this is... it's like what collectible card games do.
Yeah, I think that's where I have some hesitancy. It does feel quite a bit like...
Well, it's like Magic and any of the other ones that cycle in through seasons where they go... The difference is that Magic cycles through a 2-year season with 4 different sets, whereas we're getting a 1-year season with 1 game with 8... Oh, sorry, we're getting 2 years of life from 8 warbands. But it is a new way of adjusting to playing because it's not something Games Workshop have done before. It's essentially giving you a finite lifespan on part of what you buy.
Yeah.
Whereas I've still got models from the early 90s that still see table time.
Yeah.
Although I did notice on the Warhammer Underworlds page that Garrick's Reavers and the Steelheart Champions are available now as Night Vault, which they were the 2 starter warbands. Yeah. So hopefully that means that we're going to see all of the Shadespire warbands reboxed and packaged like these 2 to give us Bo's faction cards. Yeah. Because the faction cards aren't changing, it's just the universal cards.
But it's an interesting thought. I know we've discussed it before, but how long would you expect the lifespan to be of a model? So,
Well, I suppose the other problem with this is in context. If you and I want to keep playing Shadespire with none of Night Vault and all the rest of it and ignoring the bans, we can.
Yeah.
It's only for competition. So, and that's kind of comes back to the whole Legends thing that's been happening with Age of Sigmar and it's about to happen with 40k. Nothing's going to stop you playing with your old models. It's just at organised play. You're going to be told no. And people get hung up on that you're telling me I can't use my models. Well, we're just telling you...
You can't use them at our event.
At this event, because we're taking the advice from the manufacturer. There's nothing stopping you playing with it at home. And there will be events that let you play Legends.
Yeah.
Depending on when those come out and what those rules look like, we might allow them for things like First Blood and doubles. But for things like WATC and Masters, it'll probably be a no. Because the goal of the event is different.
Oh, well. So it's there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Beastfang gives us. And like I say, we've already seen 3 warbands now. And they normally do 8 a season, so it'll be interesting to see what the next couple are. And then we've got Psychic Awakening just around the corner now for 40k and the Sisters of Battle. Age of Sigmar, we're slowly seeing bits and pieces for. I will admit to not keeping up with that as much as some of the other games. Although I will say I'm really pleased to see Gotrek come back.
Yeah.
Gotrek Gernson, I've actually got the original 3 novels of his from Warhammer Fantasy. And
it's a very cool model.
This is about his 5th model, or 6th model. I've got a couple of them. I really wish in my youth I'd bought them, but back in the day when you had $10 pocket money every fortnight, and they were a $14 blister pack for him, and then another $14 for his sidekick Felix, and that was 2 units of Aspect Warriors. Well, I've got the Aspect Warriors. What's funny in the rules, though, is Gotrek can actually break the game if you want to. Because you can only... If he ever has to fight Marathi... If I've understood this correctly, and I may not be 100% on this because it is Age of Sigmar and I'm still learning, Marathi in any form can only ever take 3 damage a turn, and Gotrek can just keep fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting as long as there's an enemy within 1. Or within half, I think it is. Within 3, but you have to be within half to fight.
Yeah.
So if he charges Marathi, he does his 3 damage, she fights back, and then he can elect to fight again. And he can't hurt her. and then he can elect to fight again, and he can't hurt her, and can't hurt her, and can't. So you could actually have that combat go on indefinitely. And I thought it was he had to fight again if he's. And I think someone since told me his data sheet doesn't say he must; it's that he may.
Yeah.
Because if it was a must, then the game breaks. Because you have to fight again, but you can't do any damage. So now I have to fight again, but I can't do any damage, so she can't die. So that's the way I read it. I could be wrong. He only moves 4 inches a turn, though. So he's a little stumpy man who runs around after things. I like the dead Skaven on his base as a nod to his history. In the stories, he always used to deal with Gracia Thanquol and the Skaven. So there's a lot of 20 years of history of Gotrek with him dealing with the Skaven. So I say dealing, I mean with his axe to their faces. So it's really nice to see this model come out again. The most unsuccessful dwarf slayer in history because he's still alive. They all go out seeking to die and he's still there, even after the world exploded. So, yeah, it's nice to see him back in the game again.
Sometimes failure is the best success.
Well, in his case, he's very grumpy about it. It doesn't help that he's probably an avatar of a god these days. Makes him a bit hard to put down. Anyway, so lots going on in the community. Be really interested to hear what everyone has to say about these topics that we've covered today, because it has been a bit...
Higgledy-piggledy?
Yeah.
Hodgepodge?
But also, it can be a really divisive topic, and we just want to remind everyone that, there's no need to get angry or nasty or anything like that. Civil conversations are completely possible in this area. You don't have to get upset with each other. You're allowed to have different opinions.
Please don't get upset with us.
Yeah.
We mean it with the best of respect and all of those things.
Yeah, because these are some of the stuff that we talk about. And, we try and think and consider a whole bunch of things that you might not think about when it comes to organising events and what we need to do and how we, put our hobby into the marketplace. Anyway, I'm going to go and pick more colours out and keep trying.
Yeah, I still don't like any of them.
I don't know.
And I still like the...
My mirror.
My mirror.
My mirror's hard to paint.
I know.
To make it look good anyway. I've seen plenty of people do it, and I reckon I could have a crack with the airbrush and transition it with the airbrush. But I don't know how that scales on like a Guardian, like a 28mm infantry model with an airbrush.
I think you'll be fine.
Well, no, it gets really hard because if their lower arms...
Hearing excuses.
If their lower arms are meant to be green and their upper arms are meant to be blue, because that's where the transition happens, and their arms are across their torso holding a gun, I can't even use the airbrush.
Yeah, I think you're overthinking it.
It's a habit of mine.
I've noticed.
Do you understand what I mean there with that?
I do understand what you mean, but I've never seen any... not that I've been to battle. However, I've seen lots of movies and I'm sure it's very similar. And I've never seen any warriors running into battle like this. Wah! Oh, except on Braveheart. Maybe.
I'll also point out that this is an audio file, so no one can see with your arms in the air.
Okay, take a photo and put that in there. Basically, I'm holding my hands above my head.
Yeah. No, but this comes back to my own hang-ups where I would want, if I'm going to do the colour scheme from green to blue, then I would have to paint his arms that lined up with that transition. And when he's got his arms across his torso, holding the rifle, that's going to bring the green part of his arm up into the blue part of his body. Okay.
Except that from the one picture that I've seen, and therefore extensive research that I've done, it does appear that transition happens sort of mid-pectoral type area, and therefore you don't have to worry about that. It's only his shoulders that are going to be blue, and the rest of his arms are going to be green, because, as I said, nobody runs into battle with their arms above their head. So if your arms are normally hanging down your waist, then they're going to be the green colour.
Oh, dear. I think we're talking about two different things here. See, he's got green on his forearms and blue on his upper arms.
Yeah, I get that. And that's the extensive research that I've done.
But it's different because now I can't airbrush it.
Why not?
Because you'd obviously airbrush from bottom to top, green to blue, which means that you'd get the transitional fade from the bottom of his forearm to the top of his forearm, not from the wrist to the elbow, because his arm's held across him holding a gun.
You can change the direction that you...
Well, no, you can't with an airbrush, because then I'm not that good with an airbrush. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who can, but... I'm not good enough to do that.
I'm hearing excuses.
Well, I'm telling you what the facts are.
Excuses.
So there's another Mimira version, which I'll share in the show notes. It's a
I can't see it.
Wraith Knight, the Scathash Wraith Knight, which is basically all just pale blue and white, with none of the green transition.
Well, it's bottom of his legs seem to have it.
It's a bit hard to tell from the photos. And there are some lovely Mimira armies online.
That one's nice. I like that one.
I'm not sure I can pull it off.
And I don't know why I'm bothering because he's going to do whatever he wants anyway.
Well, there is that. At least you're aware of that being a thing.
Very much so.
So yeah, if you've got any suggestions for Craftworld colours, post them up. Because by the time this airs, I won't have painted anything. I'm still building.
No, he won't have.
So be interested to hear what people think. You got anything else before we sign off for the day?
No, I don't think so.
No, we're good.
Crags had their event last weekend.
Yep.
That seemed like it went really quite well.
I haven't seen the results yet, but hopefully by the time this airs,
They'll be out. But no, I mean from the anecdotal or
everyone seemed
qualitative evaluation that I've done through my extensive chatting to people seems to have gone quite well.
Yeah, everyone seemed to have a good time.
We got Skulls is coming up.
Yeah, Outpost 6030.
6030 Facebook page if you want information on their Skulls event.
Rockingham Historical Gamers are running events. Jacob said he's got a couple in the wings as well.
Mm-hmm.
Lots going on in Perth.
Yes. Perth is the place to be.
Don't know about that, but I like the enthusiasm. One last thing before we do sign off. I do have to provide a correction because I've since spoken to this person and he's already given me hell and then put me on video chat and to his store gave me hell. So Josh, by the time you get to this part of your episode, no, Five Titans did not close. If you go back and listen to the episode,
I specifically clarified that 5 times.
And he acknowledges that, but
Okay.
I also want him to acknowledge that I didn't say it did. It's just that he thought that it did.
You didn't say that it did. You said that a gaming store had closed, but yeah, I can understand why there was confusion with
there's
that.
more than a few of them who like to give me hell, and then he called me on video chat as the store was winding up for the day because of the time difference, and then got them all on video chat to give me a serving.
Just to prove that they were...
Yeah.
Well, he did actually call you as they were closing. But not closing down, just closing for the day. So
do us a favour and go and head over to 5 Titans. It's V, capital V, as in the Roman numeral, 5 Titans, on their Facebook page, and give them a like and say hello. And tell them that OBSEC sent you.
And that we know... actually, tell them that you're very sorry that they've closed down.
Yeah. See how many comments we can get on their page.
I am, of course, joking. They are open. Don't put on their Facebook page that they've closed down. We don't want to. We don't want to upset anyone who, or we don't want to share misinformation.
No, exactly. So yeah, this is good though because we have a voice and he doesn't. So I just wanted to put it out there. Anyway, we're done. Hope you enjoyed the episode. We will see you soon for live or another episode, depending on how you listen to us.
Yes, and regardless of what game system you play or what army you choose to play with, pick the one that calls to you in some way, shape or form, and happy gaming.
You've been listening to the Objective Secured podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, you can visit our website, objectivesecured.com.au. You can find us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Objective Secured, or you can email us, obsec@optusnet.com.au. Thanks for listening.